Okay. Let's call the meeting to order. I'll start with the affidavit of posting. Agenda was posted in the office of county clerk on the 15th day of April 2021. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. We have a quorum. Everyone is here. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first order of business, be consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Schleif. Any discussion? Seeing none. Discussion or no? No. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next order of business is discussion items. The Community Development Block Grant Remodeling Update. Scott.
Mr. Chairman, you'll see in your packet, we give a little brief report, see up on your screen, as well as some drawings. What we're looking at doing is just to give you an update on where we're at right now. We secured the contract, which is Keeney Architecture, for out of the Racine Kenosha area. The main principal that's working our project was in Cedarburg, so close by, so a good firm. We actually had one firm that actually put proposals together for the architectural services. We actually went to the grant administration too, because there's a lot of grant requirements on this. That we're looking at going with Kunkel Engineering. If you're familiar, they also do some engineering for the city of West Bend and several other communities within Washington County as well, to assist us with grant administration. So you saw a report, we're doing bikini for $53,000, which was a really good deal for all remodeling, architecture, for not just this room, but all the restrooms in this building, the restroom and kitchenette at the tower site, as well as the bathroom, some other ADA compliant issues over at UWMWC. So it's a really good price we got from Key Architecture to do that project. So what we also have in the packet, along with just the updates that we are working with Brad on the contracts right now. We just got the grant administration one this afternoon, but we're working on that as well. One thing with these grants, because there are federal grants through HUD down to the locals, there's a lot of requirements. And so you'll see that they're looking at having you approve the contract, which is out of the normal. Usually you approve the project, right, in the contract, we work on the contract kind of behind the scenes. But this one with being it's HUD and Community Development Block Grant, there's certain check boxes we have to check. And so this is a check box we have to check. So we're going to bring that one to you, as well as probably taking the one for the grant administration straight to the board. That's what we're looking at right now, because it is basically signing off on that to kind of check on the check boxes.
Is the checkbox that the county board approves it, or is it checkbox that we know what we're doing with respect to
The check boxes, the county, after the exact wording out there, you have to accept the contract. That the county board accepts the contract. So it's a checkbox, but that's when you take federal state money. That's what you have to do. But also, as part of the packet that you have in front of you is just to memorialize Ashley Reichert took down your comments from last time to make sure that we have what you have right. So what we're going to be doing is taking your comments and the drawings you saw in the attachment in here, give those to architects kind of the starting point, right? And we're going to visit the city of Hartford as well as part of that starting point to look at their boardroom and their makeup. And then we'll do this, they'll start bringing drafts to us, right? As you as the committee start looking at that going, okay, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, and kind of more refine it. But we just want to give them, again, that starting point. So if there's anything on this list that if you have a chance to change your mind or look at it, or something maybe that we missed on that was important to you, we just want to make sure that we got that to the architects so we can hit this ground running, because we have to have this work starting. We thought we could start in January, but as we dove into it, we have to actually have work starting in December of this year, right? And so we're going to just move the calendar up just a little bit. It won't affect you at all, but just move their bidding timeline up a little bit for the architects.
One comment, Scott, in the
Turn
clarification.
on your mic.
I'm sorry. one comment, clarification. It said on, I believe the bottom section there, it says, keep the ceiling lights off the projectors. That's not the point. The ceiling lights should be kept off the screens such that the lighting doesn't drown out the screen. I'm sure your architects can understand what the intention was.
So they're check box.
You want light control such you don't have any ceiling light on the screen to drown out the image.
Anything else on that list that you saw?
What I would like to know is if we did have a number of photos of past chairmen of the board. Yeah, and you and I had talked about that, so I would like that added to the list. Are we going to rehang those in the room again when it's done? I guess that would be my question. And then I do have some others. Going back to the discussion on that document, the second paragraph, the last sentence says that the contract amount will be $53,614 and mostly paid by the CDBG. What does that mean, mostly
Mostly.
paid by?
Yes. So it's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. That reminded me of the issue. So if you remember, the community development block grant will cover everything that's ADA compliant, right? So if they spend, let's say we want to redo the walls, for instance, let's just use that as an example. It's not an ADA compliant that we redo the walls. So if the architecture firm spends 2 hours on the plans and specifications for the finish on the walls, that is not eligible for reimbursement through community development block grant. So it's that domino effect. So for instance, so we did this, we worked on with Mark's staff at the office. So the instance, where you sit right now, that they're not ADA compliant because they're not 28 inches off the ground, right? So what we told the Department of Administration is that those are not ADA compliant. So we need new desks, right? But now those microphones are also attached to desks, so they need to be moved. Well, if we move these desks, now the wiring goes in the floor. So we got to do the floors. Then we got to get new wiring in the floor. The carpeting is down there, has to get new carpeting, right? So it's kind of that domino effect. So right now, they're saying they're going to buy that domino effect. We just want to make sure they're going to buy the domino effect, right? So it could be, we might have to come back to going, yep, we tried as best we could to say that those weren't ADA compliance. We had to do B, C, D, E after that. But they're still, because you're dealing with the state of Wisconsin, they might say, nope, it's not an ADA issue, right? They can say anywhere along that line, it's not.
Okay.
So if it's not an ADA issue that our architect has to deal with, then it's outside that scope and we got to pay for that on our own. Right now, we're thinking all of it is, and we're trying to work our way to that. But I got to be honest with you, right? And saying, yeah, there might be some things that, especially once we get down the line, you might decide that we want more like chairs, right? We want different chairs. Well, if they got to spend time on chairs, that's maybe not an ADA issue. You know, so you might be adding issues or items to this that might not be part of the ADA scope.
But any funds along those lines would need to come back to the county board for approval, correct?
Yes,
Or-
so you set aside $50,000 at one point, if you remember, as part in January, because again, part of the grant requirements where you had to put aside
Mhm.
a percentage of the grant funds. And so right now, we're looking at, that's what we will use those grant funds
Okay.
for, or the set aside funds for that project, yes. But you'll be involved every month from here to the end of the year, knowing where we're at financially. Because part of the grant administration is they only cover 15,000 of the grant administration, that contract's near 30. And so we got to come up with that extra $15,000 at the county level, part of that 50,000 to help with grant administration.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's all these little things that, you know, we're finding out as day. So once we get this grant administrator, hopefully we won't have a lot more surprises. But again, until we get knee deep in that design, and you will be involved in that design, you know, if you decide to say, yep, the lighting here isn't ADA compliant, but we want to do some really fancy stuff in here. Yeah, we might have to pay for that on our own.
Okay.
And so that's why in the CIP, you'll saw the $50,000 was all we put in there, knowing that hopefully by July, when this comes back, if we see other stuff, we'll be adding it to the CIP. And obviously that comes back to committees and boards and stuff. So
All right. And then I did have a question on the architectural firm.
Mhm.
I had never heard of them, so I did go online
Oh,
and
yeah.
looked at their site.
Mhm.
And it appears they do a lot of public works facilities.
yes,
So that gave me a little bit of concern because I thought, well, we're not Public Works. It's this big room, it's bathrooms. So can you,
Yeah, I can certainly. So they've done like libraries and stuff like that, which are larger rooms. They've done some boardrooms and stuff too. So we actually checked they had 3 or 4 references listed. We checked them all. All were glowing references, all basically from Ozaki County, believe it or not. So I was talked to Ozaki County Commissioner, who I have a really good relationship with. He gave them a glowing review, did a lot of their work. Kenosha, we actually had Dawn Saracati with IT, knows people down there. So she contacted them down there. They've been working on their building, which was done in like 1910, because we're worried about historic, right? Because they don't mention anything about historical stuff. And so we did a lot of research on them, and everybody gave them a glowing recommendation. Say they're very personable. They come out and meet with you all the time, whatever you need. So we're confident that they can do a room like this because, like I said, they've done like in those public works buildings too, that if you look at the highway shop, right, we've got a couple larger rooms, not like this,
right,
that they can manage and look at. So they do have that kind of stuff. When you look at that a lot of those public works buildings do have a boardroom, not as fancy as or what we're looking for here or as dignitary, but they do have some experience in there, like in a library too, right, of different space use and stuff. So,
okay, thank you.
You touched on ADA with the height of the desks and mentioned the chairs. I remember in our previous discussion, these chairs were like $4,000 a piece or something ridiculous. Okay, I hope we can keep the chairs. I mean, yeah, and why spend money unnecessarily if we can? Thanks.
Can't we? Yeah, man. For furniture items,
typically we have, and the county typically has in the past.
yeah,
So yes.
so we would be able to use that as well as getting good
Correct.
prices.
But if, let's say, for instance, we got rid of the benches and decide to go with chairs that are in other rooms, right, that we have here that fold up or what they would do, those probably wouldn't be included because they're not ADA compliant, right?
Those benches are the most uncomfortable things if you've
So-
ever sat
So,
in
yes,
them.
so there will be some things that if you say, when we get this thing going and you say, we don't want the benches anymore, we'd rather have some chairs that like are upstairs in like 2024, for instance, say, yep, that's what we're gonna do. Those are probably on our own. Right, so there could be definitely some costs in here that, based on your determination, what we're doing, that there could be additional costs coming to your way.
For my perspective, you mentioned that these desks have to be at 28 inches to be ADA compliant. How high are they right now?
So it's 20 from the ground to the bottom of the drawer is 24.
And that's got to be
Yeah,
28?
it's got to be 28
Yeah.
from the ground up to there. Then they have a maximum height, I believe it's 32.
Okay. Is the 32 the top, or,
I believe 32 is the top. So 28 is the bottom, I believe 32 is the top.
so you can only have
That's why we're
4
hiring an architect that
inches?
knows what they're doing. So when I say this, is what I looked up briefly. So
Yeah, yeah. And then I assume there's access room behind the desks that also probably doesn't comply with our current setup.
It actually does because it's only 30 inches, believe it or not.
Oh,
So,
okay,
and
So
you're
that
like at
part
closer to
does-
3 feet. Yeah. So-
yeah. And so
That's that whole domino effect, right? If they, go with that and we got to get them new desks and they got to move the microphones and then do the wiring underground and then the carpeting, it's that whole domino effect that we do need to convince them. You got to remember the one thing we got going for us is it wasn't a competitive grant, right? This was funds that came from the Washington County, went back to the state that's coming back to Washington County. It'd be different if we're a little more competitive grants, right? That, we decided to do this because we wanted to do it. But now we know we have a need here for it.
Okay, we'll move on to action items, community development block grant, architectural contract acceptance. Do we need a motion in second? Got it? Who made the motion? I did. And second? Okay. All right, any further discussion? Yeah. Any further discussion? We'll vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Ordinance amend sections 49-4 and 70-3 relating to per diem compensation and powers and duties. Get a motion? Supervisor Mary? We have a second? Second? Second, Supervisor Schleif? All right. Any discussion, questions on this? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I red? Am I ready to go? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious on two things. One, you mentioned some examples of where per diem was already paid. I was not aware, even though I'm the representative for ADRC, that the other folks get a per diem. I am assuming that any member from the county board does not, something like serving as the ADRC person. Am I correct?
You usually get a per diem if you've served over a certain number of meetings. So I'm not sure on that particular committee or not, if that is included in there.
Whatever it is. So, but that's additional. I thought those were just for meetings like the county board meeting, any the meetings, but ADRC is just lumped into the number of meetings you're doing. I just wanted to
Correct.
clear that. And so, but all the other people that are there, except for staff, I'm assuming staff does not get per diem, correct?
Correct.
They are here. So it would be the members at large or citizen members of the ADRC are getting $35 per meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that leads into the next question. What are we doing for Zoom meetings? Okay, so they Zoom in and they have no travel back and forth, which I think is one of the reasons that you have per diem. With the time traveling and the cost of traveling to a location, but we've only had Zoom meetings for some time. Are we still looking at paying the $35 for Zoom meetings? Are we making any type of exception for that? Or it's just the ubiquitous $35?
That's what it is. There's no exemption for a Zoom meeting. It's really for the time. So whether it's in person or it's Zoom, it's the $35 for attendance.
Okay, because the time is cut in half. You have no driving back and forth. You have no cost. I was just, kind of making that point that we're going to do this and now we're going to extend it to all of these commissions, not just the ones like the ADRC and the library that were mentioned by examples, correct?
Right. And the reason for this was because, and this really stemmed from the creation of the Samaritan Advisory Committee. When that committee had concluded, the county executive had wanted to send them a gift of some kind for their service. And we realized the code didn't permit that. And so it was one of the very rare exceptions in the code where citizens who serve on an advisory committee don't get a per diem. So we went through and we added that. There's also some cleanup language in here that you can see as well. We
Right.
reference travel policies and so forth versus code provisions that don't exist any longer. We also, in looking at this, realized that we had a policy statement in here that it was the policy of the county board that board members not be appointed to advisory committees. That was happening anyway. And so it seemed wise to pull that out and let the county board chair decide going forward if that was a policy the board wanted to keep or not. So that's the other change you see here. as well.
Right, and I understand because I know the committee that you just referenced, I mean, it really did yeoman's work on what they
Right.
did and how they didn't. But I would like if we could just, if the county board chair could just give me a little bit more of a reason why we should now, because of this, turn on per diem for every committee at $35 a pop, even if it's a Zoom meeting. I mean, just help me get over that hurdle.
It's really people that decide to get involved with the politics and get involved in the committees. I think it's one way we can thank them for their service to the community. As supervisors, when we're assigned to committees, when we know we're being compensated for it in a small amount, but I think it's a small token of gratitude for our citizens that decide to get involved in the political spectrum. I mean, you look at the Samaritan, which kind of was the impetus for this. They put in,
There's no argument.
yeah, they put in a lot of time and effort, and I think all our citizens put in time and effort. I think they should be recognized for that. I think that's where this comes from.
And I appreciate that. to a point. The point is when you have something, if we could make something maybe extraordinary for that, but to turn on the switch for absolutely every commission and committee at $35 a pop, I'm questioning that. A lot of people want to get on it because it's an interest to them, unless, and I was thinking that you may have had a problem getting some people to step up on some of the commissions and committees, which is why some type of financial thing would be done. I mean, as a note, all the members here don't get anything extra for serving as a committee chair. Okay, we take the extra time to set up the agendas. We take the extra time to come and run the meetings, take calls, are in other types of situations where we're doing communications back and forth. We're contacted by the public more often because of the fact that we're a chair. We sit on the executive committee because of that. There is no extra compensation for that. I mean, it's something that we do because of the fact that we want to be a part of what we really believe in and are willing to put in that extra effort with no additional compensation. So I'm wondering if that compensation, again, other than something that would be separate, I guess I would look at something to give the county board chair with consultation of the executive an exception for something like what Samaritan did, rather than just all of a sudden turn on the money for absolutely every commission and committee we have at $35 a meeting. I know there's not a huge dollar amount, but I'd be interested, I guess, before we look at how we're going to handle this, what are other counties doing? I mean, is this a standard thing that every commission or committee put down? I mean, we're pretty generous with what we've been doing, and we've stepped up a lot. In now my 9th year here. In fact, I think Don, you and I basically came out at the same time. And from what we had versus what we have now, I think has been generous. And there's nothing wrong with being generous, but how often do we keep going to the well without questioning it? And that's, I guess, what I'm doing is questioning it. So have we done any research at all as to what other counties approximately our size or in southeastern Wisconsin have done?
Not to my knowledge. We were just, when I was asked to draft this by the county executive, wanted to make it consistent within our own ordinance. So I didn't look up beyond that.
I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that we table this until we can have that information. What other counties are doing. And if they're doing something like that, obviously I want to fall in line. I'm not necessarily saying that we have to copy it, but when it comes to spending taxpayer money, I guess this is not necessarily something I'm going to lead with. And I would be very interested in looking at the possibility of unless you're having a problem with certain things, and then we'll address it if there's a monetary thing involved. Would be interested in giving the chair and the executive in combination the power to turn on something that is an extraordinary committee that's going to be putting in a lot of work. The example, of course, again, would be what Samaritan did. I think that that's something definitely, but I don't think what they went through should trigger dollars to everybody else who their efforts appreciated, but was not anywhere near the type of effort that was put in by the Samaritan group. So that.
Yeah, I want to answer a couple of questions. First of all, in regards to committee chairs, that was discussion within the Structure Advisory Committee. And the recommendation for that was to increase the compensation for committee chairs. So I think we've addressed that portion. And I think when that was supposed to be along with the redistricting, that is not going to happen because the census was delayed by the current administration in Washington, D.C. But that's beyond our control. In regards to the extraordinary service that the people on the Samaritan Committee did, we also have our ethics committee that will convene at a moment's notice when there's an ethics problem. If there's something that has to be addressed, they convene and during the day, and a lot of them have they're currently employed. They come in. So I don't know about picking and choosing who is the one that's going to get it. I think a blanket, they're getting the $35 per meeting, whether or not it's, on a moment's notice, whether or not they're at a meeting for 3 hours, whether they're at a meeting And most of these meetings, I know the chapter 980 committee too, that was brought together real quickly. And that's had several meetings already too, where people have to come in. That's, can I say what that's due to? Well, that's due to a sexual predator being placed within our community, or sexual offender, I should say, sexual offender being placed with our community. So those people came through. You know, I don't want to get to the point where we're going, well, I think this particular committee is a little bit more important, or that committee is a little bit more important. I think encouraging civil investment by our citizens when they come in and volunteer
They're not
to.
volunteering at $35.
I know it, but I think it's a small amount to, compensate them back. In regards to on the Zoom, well, those people are no longer allowed to claim on their taxes that they drove 20 miles one way to attend a meeting. So those that actually do drive to the meetings, they can be compensated if they fit within the parameters of the tax system to, get mileage for it. It is your concern is duly noted, and, we absolutely do not want to spend money where we don't have to spend money. But I think in this case, it's hard enough to get people to come. I don't know if we've had, major issues trying to fill. But I know a lot of times when you're looking for volunteers, the same names pop up all the time for one committee to the next because we can't find people. So.
Thank you. Just to follow up, of course, being the mayor of a city, I also have, in fact, we just did at our last meeting yesterday, do all the appointments to commissions and committees. And it's something that I know is an interesting part of being an executive like you are as a county board chair and myself as the mayor of Hartford. Sometimes they're hard to fit, but especially when you get something like, of course, we have a sexual predator type of thing in Hartford as well as regards to placement. I know that I don't think a county gets involved in ours. You're only getting involved when you're dealing with a town or something, but all the cities and some of the villages have their own, which we do. And we have no compensation whatsoever. The only one that we have any compensation for is Police and Fire Commission, and it's $10 a meeting. So that's really what I'm looking at as far as this. As regards to your point, well taken as far as being able to write off mileage. The standard deduction has been raised so high, even I'm taking the standard deduction now, as far as I have a bunch of mileage I can write off for volunteer things. I do have a lot of things I can write off, but it doesn't get to the standard deduction anymore. So for most people, that dollar thing is kind of superfluous as regards to writing off on taxes. A few years ago, I would have agreed with you, but on that now if you're tracking it, you got to be driving every day for something volunteer to come anywhere close to be able to utilize that deduction. I still am interested in getting additional information before I vote on it. I'm not saying I'm dead set against it, but I'd vote no if I can't get the additional information to the next meeting. So I do have a motion to table if that's something that we would vote on or something,
So for our purposes, for our rules, it's a motion to postpone to the next meeting. You'd need a second on that.
Okay.
Then you can vote on that.
Okay. All in favor of voting to postpone this to the next meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Oh, wait, you said aye.
Oh.
I'll take myself out if we're postponed, so, but I voted aye to postpone, so.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
The 4 to 3, postpone. So we'll postpone this to the next meeting and get some additional information regarding if other counties or municipalities are doing it. You said 10 for one committee?
Yeah, $10 for the only police and fire commission is the only one we have any type of.
Okay.
I think just as an example for municipalities, what I'm saying. Obviously, there's more driving in counties, but it's pretty tight.
Maybe we use counties as a comparison.
Yes.
And if we could, I think if we just the counties that are generally around us. I don't know if we want to look at Milwaukee,
No.
because they really don't.
Generally around us at about our size, like
Yeah.
what's Wausau, Marathon County, I think we
Yeah.
often use as a comparison.
Yeah.
Ask a question. So no issue with that, obviously. We're happy to do the work. The question is that this particular ordinance, the idea was that when the county executive or the county board chair puts an advisory committee together, which may not be a standing or standard committee that's already in our code, that those individuals are going to be paid what we thought was consistent $35 a meeting. Happy to look around, but is the intent that we look at what we're paying for all committees and bring back potential changes or recommendations there? Or are you really still looking for what's appropriate for an advisory committee? Just so we have some directions to what to bring back to you, so we're not, wasting your time.
Address what I was,
Yeah. why don't you go
okay,
first, Tim?
right, thank you. What I'm looking for is, we gave a couple of different examples that are in here, most likely, the library, the ADRC. Are those, and then the special advisory committees, I'm willing to have this set up, and I know it puts Don in a bit of a precarious position, but hey, that's what leadership is. And that is, if you're stepping forward with something that has some extraordinary circumstance, the best example would be what you mentioned with, in very short order, you're looking at doing something because of some type of immediacy of that, then pull the trigger. You don't need our permission. We can write that in, and you and the county board chair in concert with the county executive could say, yeah, this is something we want to set up. They get the $35. Boom, you're done. So more than happy to put that in. I just blanket, and I know it's a small amount. And it's like it's like when we argue for 25 minutes over a black and white copier, which I've had happen before. Meanwhile, you pass the $475,000 fire truck, with a voice vote in 2 minutes. But it's something, I guess, you can set a standard for all of a sudden everybody's got their hand out because we're giving money away that nobody else is. And is there a reason? Again, as an executive of a municipality, I'm just asking for a little more information.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
So what we are going to look at just these boards and commissions that are listed in this ordinance? That's what I don't know either, because there's jurors get paid a certain amount for serving. I know that's separate in the county code, but
Well, whatever you direct us to look into, we'll certainly do that.
well, then I guess I'd ask Supervisor Mahalik if he's just looking at these boards and commissions as listed in here.
Right. I'd be using those as an example. So yes, I would look at that, but any type of thing, again, I would be, as I had mentioned before, all for having the county board chair and the county executive do something. Samaritan was the example. I would pay them the $35. I would encourage them to. This is what brought it up. But I don't. When you have one example of something like this, I'm just not going to throw money at everybody, so everybody's covered and everybody's happy. And I'm not trying to be too negative on this, because I may very well vote for it once I find out what's going on with others. So, Chris, to answer your question, it would be the examples and what they do when they set up something, or if they have some type of extraordinary commission or committee that comes up every so often that doesn't have a regularly scheduled one. Don gave a couple of examples, and I'm sure there are others that you can do it, and then make your little list, your little spreadsheet of whatever it is, 7 or 8, and then put that out to different counties and say, hey, are you doing any type of compensation for these members, and how much is it? Do you do it per meeting? Do you do a flat rate per year? What do you do? And if it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, well, then that makes me kind of scratch my head a little bit. So, thank
Yep.
you.
I also noticed that on some we pay travel. This proposal for the advisory committee, there is nothing mentioned about travel expense either. And I think most of the public who do serve on these initial
Correct.
Then they'll get a check and you'll say, what's this for? Nobody's told them that they're going to get paid. So they are doing it out of their goodness of their heart. And their time to serve for the county, so I appreciate that on their part.
And I just double checked with Aaron Dahl, who's here from the budget office, because he'll be the one doing the legwork. And I asked if he had any additional questions for this body, knowing that he'd be doing the legwork. He said, no, you get what you need there? Okay. So he'll be able to report back to us by next month's meeting.
I'll just turn it up. There we go. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I listened in the beginning to Supervisor Mahalik with a very open mind, because I think that it raises good points. It's unfortunate that we have this motion to table, because it really didn't give me a chance to speak at that time before we voted on the motion. And I think we need to probably do a little bit better to make sure we get a few more voices in there, because it might bring a little bit more information to light. It is my understanding that this whole section here, that what was done here was an attempt to clean up the language of this section to include the advisory committee. And it is very consistent what is done here, the $35. If you look with some of the other types of committees, that it's all very consistent with existing statutes that we have, or existing code, I should say. So I really believe that, again, like Mr. Mahalik pointed out, we're not talking about a lot of money. We are talking about making sure we have community involvement, and it is consistent with the statutes that we have in place. I don't see a problem with this. I don't think it's worth the extra time, manpower, and whatnot to really delay it, but it has been tabled. So if somebody wants to reconsider or something like that, I would think that it's not unreasonable, because again, very consistent with the rest of the statutes. It is a cleanup of the language, and it will help our county executive, I do believe, go forth in doing some commissions, because this is a new position at county executive that we have here. He needs to have the latitude to do these commissions, and it should be consistent with our current statutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what you just said, and I agree with what Tim just said. But I think we still need to be stewards of the taxpayers' money. And when you talked about different committees, and when we get this list, we're going to get a better idea of how much money we're talking about, if it is significant or if not. I just would like to see a number and what the other counties around us are doing, and then I believe in it, but I can't vote with good confidence that I'm doing the right thing unless I have more information. So, thank you.
Just so everyone is really clear on this, we already are paying members of boards that are citizen members $35 per meeting. So the ones that are listed, ADRC, County Library Board, Ethics Board, Human Services are paid $35. Members of County Safety Commission, Board of Health, and Veteran Servants Commission, who are not county board members, are compensated for $35 for each day's service, for each meeting. So really what we're asking, and maybe I wasn't as clear as I should have been, is we want to bring those boards, that task forces that we appoint for specific purposes, to be compensated at the same rate as other citizens that are already being compensated for their service to the board, to the county, by serving on boards. So all it's saying is that we already have people that are receiving that remuneration for their service, yet we're asking people to come and serve on other task forces that are not specifically included within this ordinance, that are not paid. So this is just saying that those people should be paid commensurate with other citizens that are serving on committees. So maybe I wasn't clear in when I explained that. So you're looking at just paying people that if we do come up with a task, or if we have a chapter 980 commission that we put together, we have a Samaritan commission or something else comes up that we would do. So that's really what it amounts to. The other, we're already paying people. So if with that additional information, if anybody wants to revisit this or reconsider it, I'd be willing to entertain that. If not, we'll wait for additional information in our next meeting. Okay. Is there any?
Now I want to know who we are paying.
Well, even on land, the citizen member on the land and planning committee too is compensated. There's five members and a sixth that's a citizen. So I think the ones we have, if I'm correct, ADRC Center Board, the County Library Board, the Ethics Board, the Human Services Board that are not county supervisors, members of the County Traffic Safety Commission, Board of Health, and the Veteran Services Commission are compensated. I think that pretty much covers all of the ones for the most part. It says there is a caveat that there's others, but
There may be others, but.
yeah, but those are the ones that are specifically, home delivered meal program volunteers, benefit specialist volunteers shall be reimbursed for mileage. I think there's one other one where condemnation commissioners, which I don't even know what that is, are paid at an hourly rate of $10 per hour. And municipal assessors called to meetings are paid $25 per day to attend such meetings. Members County Board of Canvassers are paid $35 for each day's service and mileage provided. So, I mean, it's pretty, I think the whole concept of this is that we didn't have anything in code to pay for people that are on special meetings. Even though we're paying others, it's the old fairness type thing that we're paying these citizens to serve, but we're not paying these citizens to serve because it's not enumerated in code. So Supervisor Mary.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the understanding, as you've explained now with much, much more detail, that this tends to be the modus under which the county is operating, I would change my vote to not table the motion.
Or your motion to reconsider?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a second? A second has to come from somebody who voted in favor of it. Is there a second? Right? Or do you not? Oh, second come from anyone? Okay.
Right.
Second that?
That was not my understanding. That's not what we do in the city, for sure.
We can take a recess and double check. I don't have the rule book and sitting in front of me this morning,
Okay.
this
Well, we
afternoon.
take a short recess.
Okay, be right back.
Okay.
I want to check our rules over.
Okay.
Yeah. So you want to go and push this one most likely, give it a very good chance of having it. Actually, you know, divided vote this month, because you will have a divided vote. What's the, I'm curious as to what the reason is to push this forward immediately.
What, for this particular
For this,
change? Just to bring everybody, if we call a special task force, the motion to reconsider by Supervisor Mary and a second by Supervisor Kelly. We'll vote on the reconsideration. All in favor of reconsider, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay. I think we're supposed to say nay, right?
Okay, it's 4-3 to reconsider. Okay,
Now you have the ordinance.
now okay, the ordinance is back.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The naysayers. Okay, now we will vote on the ordinance. All in favor, signify.
Discussion before we vote.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Supervisor Bossert.
So I would have preferred to wait a month. What?
Oh,
Oh,
okay. I'm sorry. Thank you for, all right, a motion for the ordinance and a second we'll need. Okay. Moved by Supervisor Kelly. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Supervisor Dice. Okay, for no further discussion, Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, so I would have preferred to wait another month so that we would have all the info. Without that, I'm going to vote for this because it moves it to the county board and hopefully we can have that info for that meeting. In general, I like the idea, but I like to have all the information before we vote. I know sometimes we struggle to get citizen members for our committees, so I can see the value in this. And I think we all appreciate all of the work that our citizen committees do, especially the Samaritan Task Force, which really did a great job for us. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you. I'm disappointed that we had a reconsideration and then a reconsideration of the reconsideration. I've never experienced that before. I'm assuming that our attorney, Brad Stern, has determined that a second does not have to be from one of the folks that was on the other side. That,
Not the second, for Robert's rules.
okay, thank you. I have the newest edition. I'm going to have to thumb through that. Put a little
I'll show you
bend
the
in the
page after
pages.
the meeting.
Yeah, good. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll definitely be doing that. I'm going to vote no on this because of the fact that I think that it's critical that we have the type of information that was requested. So I think that we would have had a chance at 100% thing at the county board with this had we moved forward in a unified manner. The fact that we're not going to, I think, puts, is pretty much will eliminate that, which is unfortunate. It would have been nice to have the possibility of a unanimous vote for just waiting for a little bit, but that is not my decision. So therefore, again, I will vote no.
Any further discussion? Supervisor Dice.
Is it possible that that information, though, can be ready for the entire county board? I knew you could do it, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in too,
Go ahead.
in fewer words than the mayor. I'm going to vote no too. I'm going to vote no too for the reasons we've explained. I certainly believe that the people should be paid and I certainly believe we need people to step forward. But I just want the information. And as long as that comes before we meet in the county board meeting, we're all good.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion is ended. All in favor, ordinance to amend sections 49.4 and 70.3. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right, motion passes 5-2. Ordinance amendment removing certain policy provisions from committee authority and correcting cross references. I think you should speak to that, Brad, or is, okay.
Can take care of this one. I'm gonna do this one and then get out of here before you guys give me any more work. So really, as described in the committee report, we've had some confusion about when policy changes go to the board, particularly given changes to the county's organizational structure in the last year or so with the move to county executive and things like that. So we did discuss this issue as a group. We had representatives of the leadership of the legislative arm of the county as well as the executive branch. And then we had some staff there, subject matter experts to provide some input too. So I guess at this time, I direct your attention to the flow chart in the packet. It's this colorful chart. I believe it's page 26 of the electronic document. If you're doing the kind of the detailed version, it's the last, or it's, what is it called? The backup information in this agenda item. So I just kind of wanted to walk through this flow chart. Really, it's just designed to serve as a key to kind of direct departments through the policy approval process. It breaks policy into three main categories. So moving from left to right, category one is kind of the high stakes, high profile policy creation. Generally, these aren't the ones causing the confusion. These when you see them. They're very high stakes. There's really no questions typically. You will notice though that if there are questions about whether a piece of policy fits into any of these categories, we generally defer to category one to push it through the full process. So moving down, here we follow the typical process, right? You go to standing committee and then the full board and approval prior to that policy being implemented. Category two is for policies that really aren't as high stakes, aren't as juicy, but they're statutorily required and prescribed to go to the board. We're talking about budget adoption or accepting a grant award. So again, we follow this same process, standing committee, county board, then implementation. Category three, those represent, I guess, what we would call the exercise of professional discretion by department heads. So here, that's where the process, it starts the way it always does. Discussions between the department, the cabinet leadership, the county executive's office. Where it differs is that unless the action requires a budget change, it gets implemented without that formal approval process. So the board maintains the power of the purse, just like statute says. But if there are no funding implications, then that policy gets implemented. And I point you to that box at the very bottom, as with all of the policy types and policy categories, regular reporting to standing committee is encouraged. So we certainly encourage all departments to do that on a regular basis. So there are some code cleanup items that result from this. You'll notice that there aren't any scenarios where something gets approved at committee, but not the full board. So that's where you see in each standing committee section of the code, the removal of that language that says, if appropriate, recommend the same to the board, I think is the language. So the if appropriate is what was throwing people off. So the language was changed just to send it to the board. It also cleans up the language saying that the standing committees approve all department policies except those set in the exercise of professional discretion by the department head. So that exception was also causing that confusion. And really the part about approving all departmental policies seems contrary to what I think we were trying to achieve with the creation of the county executive form of government. So again, just some code cleanup was made there to kind of strike through some of that language. So with that, I'd ask the county executive's office or the county attorney to add anything that maybe I missed. Otherwise, I think we've got most of the group here that we can answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you very much. Under section 2, sub A, sub 12, that's a page 1 of 5, it says in the area here. Would like to recommend that we switch it a little bit. It says to advise and consult. So we're not making the policy, we're just making advising and consulting with the county executive with regard to the development and enforcement of county personnel policies. I can understand the striking of and enforcement. But as far as developing county personnel policies, we're advising and consulting. There is no violation between county administrator and a county executive to have an advisory or consultative relationship with the county executive on something like this. If we have human resources reporting to the administrative committee, and so the director of human resources reports to the administrative committee, I don't think we're out of bounds at all to ask if we can advise and consult the county executive with regard to the development of county personnel policies. We're not dictating, we're not telling him what he has to do, but I'd be interested in having some input with the committee on doing that, not enforcement. So I can understand striking that, but again, I don't see that as any type of a violation and code cleanup that it doesn't fit as long as we take out enforcement. So I would propose that verbiage. I don't know if that's an amendment to what we're doing, or unless that's something that you would be comfortable in doing and everybody agrees. Obviously on that, I defer to the county board chair. Thank you.
I like that. Brad, can you speak to that before information on that?
You could do it as a motion to amend Supervisor Mahalik. We would just add the language back in, except the words and enforcement, if you like.
Great. Yeah, I wanted you to kind of more explain as to why that was struck. So what was, I don't know, if
I would just add one thing is that in that same chart, that flow chart category 3, we do talk about how, the department may seek some guidance from that standing committee prior to their policy being developed as well. So they are encouraged to get a discussion item to hear, what the standing committee has to say ahead of time if need be.
okay. Yeah, you need to make a motion to amend.
Right, I'd like then to make a motion to amend on section 2, sub A, sub 12, that the number 12, obviously that would affect all the numbers that you changed, because then 13 would be 13, 14 would be 14. Obviously, that's a small thing. But I would ask that it read to advise and consult with county executive with regard to development of county personnel policies. Again, to advise and to consult. He doesn't have to listen to anything we say. We just are able, and it's in county code, that we can sit down and make sure that the administrative committee would be able to have a little bit of input there. But of course, we don't hold them to anything. Advise and consult does not mean that we're calling the shots. There's a vote or anything. We just have the opportunity to do that, and I can understand why enforcement was removed. And so I would definitely go with the removal. So again, just for last time, to advise and consult with the county executive with regard to development of county personnel policies. Again, so thank you.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing no discussion. Oh. I thought we did. Okay, we need a motion and a second on the amendment or the motion. Okay.
What's the motion?
The motion is to unstrike under section 2, number 12. It would read to advise and consult with the county executive with regard to the development of county personnel policies. That's restricted to the administrative committee. I don't see that.
Tim had motioned for that and Dennis seconded it.
Yeah, but we didn't.
We had to go back.
We had to go back and motion second for the ordinance. Yeah, I thought we had done that, but apparently we didn't.
Without this amendment. Without the amendment?
When we introduced it, the introduction of it, we didn't introduce. So now we're back up to snuff now. So that would be to unstrike that but not include the enforcement. So it'd be just to advise and consult with the county executive with regard to development of county personnel policies. That's correct? Correct. So, okay, any discussion on the amendment? Any further? Do you have none on the amendment? Okay, vote on the amendment then. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes for the amendment. Back to discussion on the ordinance.
Supervisor Schlief has been in before.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I was here for one of the administrative committee meetings where they were talking about the tuition reimbursement policy. And I know the policy that was brought forward brought up some concerns with the board with things that didn't quite match routine practices in the private sector. So when I look at this chart, I get a little bit worried that too much of the policy decision-making is being given over to the executive branch. So that's a little bit of apprehension I have. Especially with personnel policies and that's, I support the amendment for that reason. But I guess, can you speak to some examples of what would be category 3 items? And like the tuition reimbursement, there's a budgetary impact, so I'm assuming that would be a category 1. Is that correct?
So in that particular case, the tuition reimbursement policy was funded. So it would be a category 3. Excuse me. An example of a category 1 would be, had there not been funding in a budget and you want to create a new policy, then yes, you would go in front of the entire board, and standing committee before that. Another example of a category 3, it's really anything that's funded and a policy change needs to be made, or anything from the hiring practices that HR uses to a department deciding to use money on trying to think of a good example. Did we have any?
More operational that we're looking at, that we're policymakers and we don't dip into the operations part of it. That's more executive and staff than us. So part of the reason this whole thing happened was due to that meeting when we were talking about 2 instances that were really not in our purview. And the discussion lasted about an hour and a half on 2 items that we really didn't need to weigh in upon. And what it caused was here's another little a little beaver dam in the way of progress kind of thing, so yeah. So I mean, it's we want to be, what we want to be is we want to be efficient, and we don't want to move always at the speed of government, because government is slow. Things happen. We're an impediment to, we as a body are typically an impediment to having government run more efficiently. We try to help, but sometimes when we try to help, we get in the way more. So we want to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do and do them well. And there's a reason we have a county executive and we have directors that are second to none in government and people that are running things. And sometimes we just need to get out of their way a little bit. It's not as if we're trying to take any authority away from the county board. We're trying to make our government work more smoothly and efficiently. So I'm sorry if I cut in on you.
No. No, I agree with what you just said. One of the things I find and found in throughout my career is you have very intelligent people, 26 county board supervisors. When they agree on something, that's phenomenal. But it's so often they may differ, and you may not come to the correct conclusion. What we have is safeguards, because if we're talking about dollars, it goes back to the county, and the county is responsible. If we're asking for additional dollars from the budget, but operations, you typically keep boards out of operation. They're more on policy level and overall budget control, and you allow the operation to work within the operation. And that's the general rule of thumb. And that's what this is trying to do.
Am I still in, or- So if I'm understanding this right, essentially with this change, a conversation like that one, the accountability would shift to the county executive if the policy was not appropriate. As long as the funding's in the budget, or when we say funded, could that funding be funding that was originally for something else that's being moved? Like, let's say it was originally being funded for a new PTO program, and he moves that and instead puts it towards educational reimbursement.
Generally speaking, a change in intent goes to the board. And typically the way it works is that the tuition reimbursement policy is in the county budget. The budget goes to the board. The board says, oh, we don't like your version of the policy. We're not going to fund that. And that's the control. In this particular case, it had been funded, and then we did the policy. So that's kind of the way it shook out. But typically the way it would work is that, yeah, you would have the opportunity to strike it out of the budget when you adopt the budget.
Okay, and if it's coming up in the budget and the way it's presented in the budget appears good, but then after the budget's approved, the policy can be changed however the county exec wants, because it's already funded, then the accountability is just with the county executive and the voters at that point.
Correct.
Is that a correct interpretation of it?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Department heads have that ability as well within all of their different items. They can, their budget may go to the county exec and say, I'm gonna need money for this X amount, I'm gonna need money for this. And then as time goes on and things happen, this account, I didn't hardly use that, but this account is much less, so I'm gonna shift money into that. A department head can do that as long as they stay within their total amount for the year.
That's correct.
So that's really no different than what you're saying, Chris, from what I can see. They have to have that flexibility
Yeah.
as long as they stay within that initial amount that they are supposed to be at.
I guess I'm thinking it through, and changing the purpose of money is one. I should be speaking into this. I'm thinking it through, and changing the purpose of money that's already been budgeted is one thing. But if money's been budgeted for a policy based on a belief that the policy is going to be X, and then the policy provisions are changed to Y, and there's no comeback to the board for that and no approval from the board, that's where I'm not totally sure I'm comfortable with this.
I think what the safeguards are in there, like, I don't know if this is a example you're thinking of, okay, we budgeted $100,000, or there was $100,000 in the budget that was to be used for the tuition reimbursement program okay. And I say, okay, well, the department head says, well, nobody's signed up for tuition reimbursement, so I'm just gonna hire somebody new. That can't happen. So that can't happen. So, but if they have if there's something budgeted that went over, and there's another portion of their budget that didn't have the shortfall, they didn't use anywhere near what they needed to, they should be allowed to be able to shift that money to cover that shortfall. If I'm, kind of like what you're talking about. So
I guess I'm not it. There we go. I guess I'm not speaking so much about money moving as I am about policy changing. So like, let's say a tuition reimbursement plan, as an example, comes through committee and it's presented as employees have to earn a B or better. And they have to stay with the county for at least a year after completing the class. But then after the county budget's approved, then the policy is changed so that they just have to pass the class. Maybe they earn a C, maybe a C- is considered passing, and there's no follow-up with how long they have to stay with the county. That's where I'm a little bit hung up, that we could be sold one thing, and then the policy's changed after the budget's been approved in a way that substantially changes what our original intent in approving it was. So there's a little bit of apprehension, and I might be completely wrong on this, but there's just that little bit of apprehension that we're giving up a little bit too much of the policy making to the executive branch. So that's just the apprehension I have right now.
Okay, Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you. I'd have to go back to what Supervisor Kelling said before as regards to a county administrator versus a county executive. That is what you get when we voted for county executive. Exactly what you said. Things can change. That power exists. I appreciate what Matt Furno said as regards to what you guys voted unanimously. Thank you very much to change to advise and consult with the county executive with regard to development of policies, development only, again, not enforcement. And that leads exactly to what Matt was saying, is that we're not here to run the ship. We're here to display the map and say, we want to go here. Okay, the people who run the ship, steer the ship, put the sails, that staff with the county executive having the wheel in his hand. And he gets to make those decisions because he doesn't work for us anymore. He works directly for the voters. So what you're talking about as far as policies, yes, that can happen. I think to the detriment of the office of county executive, he realizes that if he does exactly what you just said, how are we going to react the next time when he comes to us for a policy thing? Basically, it bites him in the keister because we'll be able to hold it up and he'll be beaten up, in this room by multiple county supervisors, and that's what happens. So basically, if he says, look, I'm telling you that this is the policy, I give my word, unless there's an extraordinary circumstance, I give my word that I'm going to hold on to this, and then he doesn't. That's shame on him. I don't think he would ever do it, but I mean, that's shame on him, and there is a political price to pay. We've taken the county administrator position and put it into the realm of politics, which means there's politics. So he's going to have to face that. He'll have to make his decisions. I agree with your concern, but I think, again, what Supervisor Kelling brought up, when you have a county executive versus a county administrator, this literally is what we signed up for. And I think he'll play straight. And if he does, it's kumbaya. If he doesn't, then, like I said, the next time he comes and knocks on the door, who's going to answer? So that's, thank you.
Supervisor Kelling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Tim, for stealing all my thunder. Because, that is exactly the direction that I was going to go. I can't think of or envision a scenario where a department head or the county executive himself would present something in a particular way and give us the old bait and switch. First of all, I have way more regard for our people than that, and certainly our county executive, and I just couldn't see that happening. But if it did, to what Tim said is exactly correct. Fool me once, shame on me, twice. Fool me twice, shame. But now my question though is when I look at the chart, and this is for you now. So we've passed this policy and it's action increases headcount next year. All no. Okay, so it's going down to policy implemented and then continued reporting to committee, consent agenda. Now, if it's in the consent agenda, and I really don't know, I'm asking this question, couldn't then at that point we bring up that the policy was misrepresented or didn't work out the way we thought it was when we go to the consent agenda?
So I would defer that to the county attorney. My only intent with putting consent agenda is that it would be just in the report.
So basically it's what, and that's what I'm because I didn't know the answer to this. This is like a little safety switch that just in case something hinky, weird, whatever comes down, and we have the ability at the end in the consent agenda to question it.
Or you can always make a motion to pull something on a consent agenda and discuss it as if it were any other discussion items. Absolutely, you'd have that opportunity.
And there's your ability to fix whatever ails you. So thank you.
Well, I also think that the amendment offered by Supervisor Mahalik covers much of what the concern is, that any policies coming forward are going to have the advice and consult with the county executive regarding development of personnel policies. So that's another safeguard put in there. So I think even though we don't, have the final say on it's going to come, but we know what's coming and we know what the intent is. And if there is a change in the intent of it, we will be advised of that and that we would react to that. So, okay. Any further discussion on this?
I'm just gonna make one quick comment.
You have 1 minute.
I will probably beat that. So nothing in this discussion is intended to any way mean that there's any distrust of Josh, but we always set up government with appropriate controls. There were a lot of county board supervisors in Milwaukee who trusted County Executive Tom Ament. And that situation demonstrates exactly why we put in controls. And we don't know who Josh's successor will be or when Josh will even have a successor, but it's just always good government to have the right safeguards in place. Thank you.
Agreed. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on the ordinance. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance passes to the county board. Ordinance amendment changing the standing committee oversight for Fair Park Agriculture Industrial Society from the administrative committee to the land use and planning committee. I will move to approve. Make a motion. Second, Supervisor Bossert.
All right, somebody's got to make the motion to throw this off.
All right, any discussion? Any discussion? Must be getting late.
I got one.
Hearing none.
Wait, I go.
Nope.
I just, not real quick, this is 30 seconds. I am so happy that it's going to the committee that is chaired by my friend Carol Mary. Thank you.
Okay. With that, see no further discussion, vote on that ordinance. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance moves to the county board for final approval. Next meeting date, Wednesday, May 19th, 2021,